Last week we ended before we got to committees and subcommittees, so we'll begin at that now. And committees and subcommittees are amazing. I mean, as far as the numbers and the complexity. If you've watched them on C-SPAN, you've had an opportunity to watch quite a few of the hearings, and they're showing them all the time on C-SPAN. And the chairman of a committee is the member of the Senate majority. And the ranking member, which seems like a rather strange title, is the opposite party's member. So, for example, you'll have a Republican now as the chairman of a Senate committee, and a Democrat as what they call the ranking member, the kind of second in command, you might say. Committees and subcommittees is where the legislation is crafted and revised. And the Senate and House staff are the ones who work so hard and construct the preliminary drafts. That's why we have all this staff that are provided for the senators and representatives. Subcommittees do work. They cull through bills. They eliminate most of them. Most bills will pass as they're approved by the committee. So it's very important. The committee can call and even subpoena witnesses. Here is a committee in session with, of course, the table where the witnesses are seated and then the audience behind them and the photographers in the front. So to show you the complexity, the number of totals, committees and subcommittees in the House numbers 122. Isn't that something? And 89 in the Senate. So that is a tremendous number of committees and subcommittees. The steering committees give new members assignments, and seats are usually proportional to the party margins of the full chamber. For example, you might have many more Republicans currently in a Senate committee than Democrats. The limits on the number of committees can serve on are set also. They don't want to overwhelm each person and give that person only so much to do. It helps to have some background in a committee's agenda to get an assignment. And it helps to be a senior member to serve on a major committee. So if we look at the House of the 437 reps, each rep serves on about 6 committees. And so they're considered more specialists in that they're not on one of 12 committees as in the Senate. With a lot less members of the Senate, the senators have to serve, each has to serve on more committees. So the senators are considered perhaps more generalists and perhaps put more reliance on their staff to inform them. So the House committees and subcommittees, first of all. There are 21 committees and 101 subcommittees. And the boldface type are the exclusive members only on one committee, Ways and Means, Rules, and Appropriations. And we have all these other committees, and then in parentheses are the subcommittees. So the 3 House committees of note, the Appropriations Committee that deals with expenditures, Rules Committee, one of the most powerful committees, and the Ways and Means Committee, which deals with taxes, tariffs, Social Security, and Medicare. The House Rules Committee decides by which rule a bill will reach the House floor, determines the rules of debate, sets a time limit on debate, clearly has influence over the ability for a bill to pass. And unlike other House committees, it's weighted even more heavily in favor of the majority party. So the current Rules Committee has, that doesn't sound right because the Democrats are, well, don't pay any attention to my figures here, but just the statement. Now, Eugene McCarthy, who was a Minnesota congressman and senator, his advice to new representatives, House rules are too complicated, use the parliamentarian. Interesting. So Senate committees and subcommittees, there are 89 of them. Here they are listed along with their subcommittees in parentheses again. Some of them don't have subcommittees. The Senate committee is where the real work of the Senate gets done, as somebody's quote. The parties control the committee seats about in proportion to their share of seats on the full Senate floor. Committee work allows senators to shine, to make their impact. Two or more of a senator's committees may meet simultaneously, causing the senator to juggle. So if you watch C-SPAN, sometimes, well, I guess particularly they'll leave for a vote or something on the floor, but they have to juggle schedules. There's a hierarchy of more desirable committee assignments. Most bills die on subcommittee or committee. That's important to remember when we get to bills. Richard Russell Jr., Georgia senator for almost 40 years. He said to a freshman senator who wanted help in getting an appointment to the Armed Services Committee, "What you want is a seat on the Appropriations Committee where things happen." And then there are joint committees that are comprised of both House and Senate members. Here are some of them down below. And there are conference committees. A conference committee is appointed by a House and Senate to resolve disputes on a bill, because bills have to pass the Senate and the House in identical form. Normally, the conference committee is composed of senior members of the standing committees that first considered the bill. It can become very contentious when houses are controlled by opposite parties. Joseph G. Cannon, Speaker of the House for some 8 years. He used unprecedented power. He wielded absolute power over what bills reached the floor and in what form. He reserved the right to not only appoint committee chairs, but all committee members. House and Senate committee staffs. In 2000, House committees averaged 68 staff. And in 2000, Senate committees averaged 46 staff. Committee staff would include staff directors, committee counsel, committee investigators, press secretaries, chief clerks, office managers, schedulers, documents clerks, and assistants. Very complex. Congressional hearings are the principal formal method by which committees collect and analyze information in the early stages of legislative policymaking. There are legislative hearings, oversight hearings, investigative and confirmation hearings, and field hearings. Most of them are open to the public. Hearings can be viewed on C-SPAN, C-SPAN 2, and C-SPAN 3. And like I said, subpoenas may be issued, although they're infrequently required. Now, caucuses of the U.S. Congress, also known as coalitions, study groups, task forces, or working groups. There are perhaps 200 Senate and House caucuses, and they meet to pursue common legislative objectives. Now, congressional support agencies. The Library of Congress was established in 1800 to have a library for the congressmen. It's gone way beyond that. The Congressional Research Service, established in 1914, Congress's think tank. The Government Accountability Office, established in 1921. The Congressional Budget Office, which didn't come until 1974. Moving on to constitutional amendments, over 10,000 constitutional amendments have been formally proposed. How many do we have? A very small number, right? Way under 100, way under. 33 have been adopted by Congress of those 10,000. 2/3 or a supermajority of quorum of members of both houses is necessary, or 2/3 supermajority of a national convention called by Congress at the request of legislatures of at least 2/3 of the states. That's one's never been used to adopt a constitutional amendment. Only 27 have been ratified by the states to become law. The legislatures of 3/4 of the states are necessary for ratification, or state ratifying conventions in 3/4 of the states. John Kennedy said after becoming president, "When I was a congressman, I never realized how important Congress was, but now I do." Now let's move on to bills. Bills which become laws. About 14,000 bills were introduced in the 110th Congress. Of them, about 460 became law. That's less than 4%. Most bills die in committee. They aren't forwarded to the general bodies. The acquisition of co-sponsors can increase the odds of passage. When bills are submitted in the House, they're placed in what's called the hopper. And with the Senate, they're delivered to clerks on the Senate floor. Here's a complex chart, and I'm going to show you a more simplification that I made up of how laws are made. First of all, bills can be introduced by the president, executive agencies, committees, interest groups, even private individuals. You and I could submit a bill. But they are submitted then to a member of Congress. From there, the bill is introduced on the floor of the House or Senate. Procurement of sponsors then occurs. And then it goes to a committee. And then a subcommittee, perhaps. During the meeting on the committee or subcommittee, there's research, discussion, hearings, and what they call markup. Changes and modifications. Then it goes to the full committee. And then there's more markup. From there, it would go to the House Rules Committee, where there would be debate on the House floor. Or it goes to debate on the Senate floor, which might include a possible hold or filibuster. The bill will pass with a simple majority. Same process in each house, each chamber. The conference committee is set up if the bills are not identical to make them identical for passage in both chambers. Then final approval occurs in both chambers. Then it goes to the president. The president has three options. He may sign the bill and it passes, becomes law. He may exercise a pocket veto, or he may veto it. If he vetoes it, it goes back to the House and Senate. Then 2/3 are needed in each chamber to override the veto. Then it becomes law or fails. A pocket veto occurs if it's not signed in 10 days, then it becomes law if Congress is still in session. The bill usually passes through over 100 specific steps between introduction and enactment. Claire McCaskill, who is a recent senator from Missouri, quoted, "I am the only United States senator in the country that I'm aware of that's had the far left up on TV and the far right up on TV against me at the same time." What is a senator or rep's day-to-day work? It includes meetings, hearings, media interviews, speeches, events of different sorts, phone calls, and voting. The work week often is reduced to Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday due to travel back to their home constituencies for long weekends. The Senate session schedule, just to show you an example from 2017, there were recesses as follows: 1 week in February, 2 weeks in April, 1 week in May and June, or in that span, 1 week in July, 5 weeks in August, 1 week in November, and 2 weeks in December. What about a filibuster and a hold? The filibuster is a delaying or obstructive tactic to prevent a measure from being brought to a vote due to a Senate rule. Originally, there was no time limit, no closure or cloture mechanism. In 1917, a supermajority of 67 could invoke cloture. And in 1975, it was decided that a majority of 60 could invoke cloture. Thus, although a bill might have majority support, a minority of 41 or more senators can still prevent a final vote through endless debate, effectively defeating the bill. A filibuster could be a lengthy talkathon, but any tactic to prevent bringing to a vote by using the rules of the Senate can be used. 60 working days filibuster against Civil Rights Act in 1964 occurred. A hold is simply a threat of a filibuster. It can be private or made public. The majority leader won't usually call up a matter until the hold has been lifted. Supermajority votes in the Senate. It's specified in the Constitution requiring a 2/3 vote, overriding presidential vetoes, removing federal officers through impeachment procedures, ratifying treaties, expelling members from the Senate or the House, proposing constitutional amendments, and the removal of the president from office under the 25th Amendment by 2/3 vote of both House and Senate. Specified in the Senate rules and precedents is a 3/5 vote, 60% to invoke cloture on most questions. 2/3 vote of senators present and voting to invoke cloture on measures to amend Senate rules. Once cloture is invoked, the 30 hours of debate during post-cloture consideration may be extended by a vote of 3/5 of all senators duly chosen and sworn. A 2/3 vote of senators present, a quorum being present, to suspend the standing rules of the Senate, and a simple majority requirement, the so-called nuclear option. The nuclear option gets its name as an analogy to nuclear weapons as the most severe option in warfare. It's a parliamentary procedure that permits the Senate to override the 60-vote rule, supermajority rule, to close debate by a simple majority of 51 votes. On November 21st, 2013, Senate Democrats used the nuclear option to eliminate filibusters on federal judicial appointments. And on April 6, 2017, Senate Republicans used the nuclear option to clear the way for the approval of a Supreme Court justice. Under the new nuclear option proceedings, the majority leader and presiding officer, guided by parliamentary experts, go through a series of choreographed steps in which the leader suggests a change to the rules, the presiding officer challenges him, and then the leader calls a second vote on a rules change which requires only 51 votes. A supermajority vote in the House from the Constitution requiring a 2/3 vote is overriding presidential vetoes, expelling members from the House, proposing constitutional amendments, and removal of the president from office under the 25th Amendment by a 2/3 vote of both House and Senate. Specified in the House rules and precedents is a 2/3 vote for temporarily suspending the rules of debate and voting. As far as the confirmation by the Senate, as of about 2010, about 95% of all cabinet nominees were confirmed, and about 2/3 of all Supreme Court nominees. We sometimes see movement between the House and the Senate. Representatives have become senators in 615 cases. Senators have never become representatives that I could find. Movement between Congress and the presidency. We have had 19 representatives become presidents, 16 senators. One president became a representative, John Quincy Adams, and one president became a senator, Andrew Johnson. Movement between Congress and the Supreme Court. Representatives who have become justices, 17 of them. 14 senators have become justices, and 1 justice has become a senator. How does the impeachment process work? It's the process by which a legislative body levels charges against a government official. The impeachment is the accusation. The House of Representatives shall have the sole power of impeachment. That's in the Constitution. In order to impeach, the House must find that the government official has committed treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. That's from the Constitution. First, the House investigates the facts. A majority of the House must find sufficient evidence. The House then issues articles of impeachment. The articles are immediately forwarded to the United States Senate. The Senate conducts a trial on the allegations set forth in the articles of impeachment. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court presides, and the senators are the jurists. A senator must find that the official committed an act or acts of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors as set out in the articles of impeachment. 2/3 of the senators must vote for conviction. If convicted, the official is removed from office. If not, the articles of impeachment are dismissed and the official remains in office. An impeachment trial is not necessary to prove the elements beyond a reasonable doubt, unlike a normal jury trial of the citizenry. It is necessary only to convince senators that the official committed treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. This is from an attorney from Cedar Rapids. Let's now talk about lobbying. Lobbying is highly controversial. It's a paid activity of special interest groups. Federal lobbyists must register with the clerk of the U.S. House and the secretary of the U.S. Senate. Lobbying is subject to extensive and complex rules. Lobbying is ruled by courts as constitutionally protected free speech. And since 1970, the numbers of lobbyists and budgets have increased greatly. Who are the lobbyists? Corporations and many coalitions. Over 12,000 lobbyists may be in Washington. Perhaps only dozens have what might be considered real clout. There could be 100,000 working lobbyists, $9 billion involved with obscure activity. Lobbying is used to sway and influence Congress on specific action for specific legislation. Lobbyists often assist congresspersons with a campaign finance. Lobbyists, though, can educate lawmakers. Lobby groups sometimes write legislation. What about the movement between Congress and lobbying? A 1 or 2 year wait is required. I don't know the very specifics, but in 1998, there were 138 active lobbyists, and a little less than that in 1999. Donald A. Ritchie, quote from him, one study calculated that from 1998 to 2004, almost half of all retired members of Congress engaged in lobbying. Well, that could be very alarming to some. Limitations on lobbying. Lobbying techniques. They catch members on the fly in the lobby, hence the name. Assist congresspersons with campaign finance, arrange fundraisers. Hire former high-ranking congressional staffers and aides. Be truthful. Don't use subterfuge. Develop trust and confidence, friendships with the connected persons. Use outside lobbying to sway public opinion. Mass media, editors to write editorials, cover stories, telephone calls, emails, marches down Washington Mall, bus caravans. So don't think of lobbying as entirely that which occurs in the halls of the Capitol building. Monitor congressional voting patterns. This was from somewhere. 427 former members of Congress are lobbyists. 40 years ago, 3% of Congress became lobbyists. Now 50% of senators and 42% of representatives become lobbyists, many with 7-digit salaries. Here are how much tech companies spent in 2015 lobbying. Google, by far the largest, $16-some million. Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, and so forth. Summary. The workings of Congress are obscure to many, or perhaps most. They're very complex. Congress runs in a seemingly complex manner. It certainly does. I did not give you a complete story by any means. I've intended to give you more awareness of the workings of Congress. Now you may wish to dig a little deeper. Thank you.